to the Bleav in UCF podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Carter.
And I'm your host, Cody Van Sealalum.
Cody, man, Saturday was just a fun day. Man, can you tell me a little bit about the college game day atmosphere?
College game day, that was one of the best atmospheres I had been in. We were allowed to be let in 3 hours before tip off. They originally scheduled us to be in at 8:30, but they decided to open the doors a little early to be let in at 8. And before that, Coach Seth Greenberg actually went out and they did a live Sports Center segment with the Iowa State fan base, and that was really great to see. So it took a lot of caffeine. I will admit it. It took a lot of caffeine,
Mm-hmm.
a couple espressos, a couple Red Bulls, but managed to make it through. And yeah, that was a really fun atmosphere. And some of the signs were pretty golden. If you
Right.
saw me, you saw my sign of Keyshawn Gilbert's bleeding from Marquette, and it says Cyclones versus the world.
Oh,
Another
that's
buddy of
cool.
mine had the this is also basket burger ball with the fighting chicken and Peter Griffin. And then
I love that.
yep. And then another friend of mine. Yep. After that, I had another friend who made a who had the Jay Williams sign from when college game day was at here against Kansas when he had the jersey. It happened again.
Yeah, I saw
Jay
that.
Williams. hmm So pretty cool. And all three of us actually got our signed by our respective main audience.
Oh, look at that.
hmm Got it signed by TJ Altenberger, by Jay Williams, and Keyshawn Gilbert. So all three of us had that. So we're framing that, and that'll forever be something. But there were some other signs that I did like. I love the amount of signs that said like, "I want my mommy back. We want mommy back." It was hilarious. We were saying it and we spoke it into profit because look who came back, Milan Momcilovic, and we'll get into his performance later. But Milan got a really loud ovation as soon as
Mm-hmm.
like TJ announced that he would be back, and Milan walked down to the court. Loud ovation for Milan. So that just shows that just the importance of having Milan Momcilovic and just the kind of energy he brings and the kind of
Right.
enthusiasm brought the crowd. So yeah, college game day overall was great. It was a really fun time, and the game was even more fun than that.
Dude, yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the best game. Like, I had a good time watching it, and just one thing for me that made a difference was the spacing was just absolutely stellar the entire game, man. Like the ball was moving a lot more fluidly. The bigs were able to get what they could inside. The offensive rebounding was a whole lot better. Um, so I think just we thought that it would be a loss, but I didn't think we thought it was going to be as big as a loss as we thought it was going to be. But I mean, I have one question, man. Are the clones back?
I'd say yes. Maybe I'm a little overreacting. Maybe I'm a little jumping the gun a little bit, but yes, you can clearly tell that there it was night and day with having Milan on the court and not having him. You could just tell that the
Right.
spacing was much better. Lanes opened up much more. The paint for the bigs and Keyshawn Gilbert. I think we saw Keyshawn Gilbert like in that game, although still it wasn't a great performance, but you could just see that Keyshawn Gilbert was getting reacclimated to having those lanes open because you could just tell on the body language, Keyshawn Gilbert, he's like, wait, this lane's actually open again. You could
Right.
just tell there was that little bit of hesitation, but that's just because he had been so used to 4 or 5 guys clogging up the paint and clogging up those attacking lanes that I think with time and now that you're really getting back to the full circle to what you had before Milan went out with his injury, you could tell I think Keyshawn's going to have a reinvigorated confidence, and I think he was the player that got impacted the most by Milan's injury. So I think Keyshawn's going to get back to his non-con form when he was putting up big numbers in Maui, what he did against Marquette, and I think that will just be a great shape for Iowa State. Obviously, you got that spacing allowing our players to do more. Curtis Jones coming back off the bench is going to be really nice because now
Hmm.
your players are going to be much more fresh. They're not going to be as exhausted because in that game, the only player to break 30 minutes on the court was Keyshawn Gilbert. Everybody else was under 30 minutes. So you could just tell that the rotations were much better. You had fresher legs, and that attributes to having better defense and better offense.
Definitely, man. You saw like especially a lot with his rotations, like Cujo being his old self. I think is just one thing for me that one that this team was missing. Like we always said that he was better off the bench, because like once you have that presence that's gone, like naturally people are gonna have to step up, and if you're not ready, like to step up in that spot like Heisey and Watson were, because obviously they're depth guys, but like when you have to step into that can be a very hard transition, going from what your role is usually to be in having an even bigger role. So just having Milan, just especially just for this stretch we're in now, is going to be nice. Like especially, and I'm excited to see how this bench does. I mean, obviously, they have a chance to improve this next three games until 12 days from now we play Houston. So like, I mean, that's when we're really going to see the strength and depth of this bench. So I mean, it's gonna be a interesting next few games to see how we come together as a team.
for sure. Yeah, I think with that said, let's take a look at the TCU game itself because
Sure.
the TCU game it just felt like a very good therapeutic kind of day. It was just a day where everybody can breathe a sigh of relief. A lot of like the skate was obviously broken, so that's huge for our players, and I think their confidence is back. You could just tell by the body language on everybody in an Iowa State uniform, the confidence is back. The guys were playing with the swagger they had before the injury, and I just think overall that's going to bode well for this team. I mean, was talking about. You had four players crack double digits. Curtis Jones off the bench was your leading scorer with 24 points. He went 5 of 6 from the perimeter. So yeah, like you said, he's back to producing in his old ways, and that's great to see. Not just that, you also had Deshaun Jackson and Joshua Jefferson combined for 27 points, which is kind of the efficiency that you really want to see out of your front court, which can allow your perimeter, like your shooters, to open up. And speaking of that, Milan Momcilovic first came back. He went 4 of 7 from three, and all of those were corner threes. So that if you saw my tweet about the Peter Griffin corner three meme, that's
Call it
why I
agree.
made it. Yeah, at some point, I think the sound, like the audio people or the game day people at Iowa State, they need to just have that button ready to go. Just anytime anyone hits a corner three, you just got to use it.
Call it
I was I was sitting on that for so long,
agree.
and finally I could use it. But man, what a return from Milan! And I mean, the thing was, all these points happened in the second half. That first half, he was a step slow, and I think both TJ and Milan admitted that he was a little slow. They admitted getting that rust down the first half was kind of what happened, and then you saw in the second half that he just caught. It was a catch and shoot. I mean, he was looking like Larry Bird.
Right.
So good to see that. And then Keyshawn Gilbert had a pretty solid day, even though, although the big thing that people are going to worry about, and just with the team overall, the turnovers. Keyshawn Gilbert did
Yeah.
have 5 turnovers, and I think a lot of the turnovers that were attributed to Iowa State was just guys being very unselfish, just trying to
Hmm.
distribute the ball, maybe making an unnecessary extra pass. But I think with time and relearning the chemistry with Milan on the court, I
Yeah.
think that's going to help reduce the turnover numbers still. We'll see. But outside of those turnovers, Keyshawn Gilbert had a solid day, 8 points, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. So he may not be putting double digit points, but he's getting you a lot. I mean, he almost had a double double. So that's good to see.
Yeah.
And then, yeah,
A
and then
solid day,
Taman
man.
Lipsy. Then Taman Lipsy only had 1 point, which was 1 of 2 shooting from free throws, but he did put 5 assists, 3 rebounds, and a steal as well. So Taman Lipsy is getting it done even when he's not putting up stats. You can tell that Taman Lipsy is just playing his game. He's leading the offense. He's getting those plays that really set up everybody else to score the ball.
Yeah. I mean, anytime when Taman doesn't have to be the leading scorer, that's when you know that this team is firing on all cylinders.
Hmm.
Because when anytime that he can be a distributor and not have to be the main guy to get points, because he can do that, but he would rather be a guy who can distribute the ball and give his guys the ball. That's the best thing. That's like one of his best qualities. He
Hmm.
can score when he needs to, but also just be a distributor and a true point guard when he needs to.
Yep. Yeah, so overall, really good day. I mean, Iowa State won this game 82-52. I mean, the 3-point shooting, it was mainly Milan and Curtis. They were the main 3-point shooters for a 9 of 19 day for Iowa State. Meanwhile, TCU zero or yeah 0 of 8 in the second half from the perimeter, 2 of 14 overall. So that defense for Iowa State really making it difficult for TCU's offense to really find points.
Oh, definitely, man. It was a struggle. Like once we got up big after halftime, I'm like, oh, they're gonna just start chucking up threes now because now they're panicking, and like, didn't it seem to you like they didn't really have like a game plan going in at all? Because it just seems like they were playing willy nilly basically and just going in there and hoping to win and not really coming there with a distinct game plan.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it because I mean, probably because the fact that Milan was announced like the day of that he was going to be in the
Right.
game, and that kind of might have thrown a wrench into TCU's plans. So, but still, it was difficult for TCU to really do anything. Nobody cracked double digit scoring. And I mean, they had 16 turnovers, and Iowa State was able to get 22 points off of those turnovers. So both teams turned the ball over a lot. I mean, there were a lot of possessions, but
Yeah.
Iowa State had the edge, 22-12 in terms of points off of turnovers that favor the Cyclones. And also, they dominated the paint. Did Iowa State
Hmm.
44 points to 28. I think at one point it was like 16-2 points in
Wow.
the paint for Iowa State compared to TCU. So yeah, this was the Iowa State of old. This is just a game where they got back their mojo, and I think overall it sets them up well to get a top four seed in the Big 12 tournament and to keep them in the race for a 2 seed overall when it comes to March.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a fun finish. We have some great matchups coming up at home and on the road. So let's make sure we tune into that going into this final stretch. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at some of the action in the Big 12 overall. On Saturday, there were some great games that happened. We're going to do that right now. So, yeah, on Saturday, um, we had Houston go on the road uh, to a Boulder, and they survived and eked out a tough win in Boulder. As Jawan Roberts is the game high score for Houston with 20 points as Houston survives Colorado 69-59.
Hmm. And I think it was noted that Houston, they're going through something similar to what Iowa State did when Iowa State had out Milan Momcilovic. Houston, I believe, was out Emmanuel Sharp. So that injury,
Yeah.
obviously, Houston's feeling the same effects that we did. But I mean, for them to pull out a win against Colorado in Boulder, very key for them. I mean, they're still them in Arizona are the two top dogs of the Big 12, and they're going to be the ones. They're both in the driver's seat right now, and I mean that's going to be a fun matchup that we'll get to eventually. But Houston surviving Colorado, looking good for them. I think it's a good rebound for Houston after they lost to Texas Tech. I think they also won another game in between that. Let me just make sure here. Uh, yeah, I mean, after that loss to
Oh, they
Texas
beat
Tech.
Oklahoma State.
Mhm. Yep, they beat Oklahoma State 72-63. I think we talked about that in the last episode where it was that was too close for comfort if you're Houston.
Yeah.
But to their credit, they got the win over Colorado and 11-1 in conference. And I mean, they're looking like a possible 1 seed coming come March.
Yeah. I have to look at the. After this game, we're gonna look at the new polls because the polls just came out today, and
Oh,
Iowa State came in and they're still in the top 10. But we're gonna talk about it right after we talk about this matchup right here. Arizona had a great game plan again, and they're just on a roll. Arizona wins by 9 and pulls away from Arizona, but it just seemed like this game, Arizona was basically at arm's length this entire game. And basically, every time that it looked like Arizona was going to blow them out. Texas Tech kept fighting and kept fighting, but unfortunately, the Wildcats became too much, and one of the main reasons why they won this game was, I mean, the production from their bench. You had KJ Lewis coming off the bench with 15, and then Henry Visar coming off the bench, and then with Jaden Bradley, KL Love, that duo scoring 16 points, and then Toby Awaka with 14. I mean, everyone had to step up in this game for Arizona, and that's one of the main reasons why they won this game.
hmm And yeah, that bench production was huge, and then and the starters producing as well because Texas Tech, I mean, they had production as well from their bench and their
Yeah,
starters. I mean, JT Toppin led the Red Raiders with 21 points, followed by Darren Williams with 17, Elijah Hawkins with 10, Chance McMillan with 8, and then Christian Anderson off the bench with 17. So yeah, Arizona needed everybody to produce in some way, shape, or form, and they did. So Arizona, they're looking much better. They're climbing up the seeding, and who knows where they're going to end up. They keep this up. Where do you think they'll end up?
man, if they keep this up, especially if they have, let's say they have a 2-0 week this week, it's gonna be rough. They got two tough matchups, but if they keep winning, man, I can see them maybe sniffing, maybe top. They're at 13 right now, so like probably in the top 10 if some things go their way in the rankings or if they have a 2-0 week. And um, I mean, and that goes into the next matchup. But first, we're going to look at the rankings for college basketball real quick.
Hmm
To just so they just came out fresh out the press, I believe about an hour ago. But here is right now your new top 10 right now. So we have Auburn and Alabama coming in at 1-2. Auburn coming off a double digit loss to Florida at home. Then we have Duke and Florida tied at number three. Florida with a huge one on the road at Auburn. Um, and then you have Tennessee coming in at fifth. Houston, Purdue, who has been very impressive lately. A&M coming in at eight. St. John's with a huge one on the road at UConn. I mean, Rick Pitino's doing a hell of a job
hmm
at St. John's, and then Iowa State to round out the top 10. What are your thoughts?
Um, I actually am. This is a solid. I'd say this isn't too bad for the top 10. I mean, Auburn, even with that loss to Florida, that's, I mean, they'll still be number one, I guess, because realistically, who would, like, I guess there could have been a case maybe Alabama or Tennessee were to take over. But I mean, with both Alabama and Duke losing, I guess it makes sense. I can see why they would keep Auburn number one, and then Alabama
Right.
moving up to that number two spot is nice, and then Florida being number three after that huge win of the Jungle. So I mean, I've been seeing in some like seed lines that you can have possibly all four number one seeds be an SEC team. You could make a case for that. But right now, obviously, I think I saw JBR Bracketology put Auburn, Alabama, and I think it was Florida or Tennessee as three of the four number one seeds in March, and the Duke being the other one seed. But there could be a case for that. Um, Houston continuing to climb. Yep, I mean them in Arizona, cream of the crop when it comes to the Big 12 right now. Makes sense for them.
Yep.
Purdue holding still, solid week. I mean Purdue's looking like the front runner in the Big 10. A&M making a solid case for a two seed, and then St. John's obviously. Yeah, Rick Pitino. St. John's is looking really good. I mean, their
Yeah, they
only
are.
loss, I believe, since non-con, their only loss in conference, I believe, was to Creighton. And I mean, that's just the job. I mean, St. John's doing really good, and then Iowa State staying in the top 10. I mean, Iowa State keeps the longest active streak of being inside the AP top 10. Some might have had us drop a little bit further, but I think us at 10 is fine because I mean it still shows that we're good. And I mean, you clearly saw the difference with and without Milan. I think the committee is going to take note of that if Iowa State keeps winning. They're going to know, yeah, you can clearly see a difference between having Milan and without him. But if you want to dig deeper into the AP poll, you see Michigan State at 11. Texas Tech and Arizona are right on each other. Arizona rising up 7 spots to that 13 spot. Memphis, so 3 spots. Kentucky drops a spot. Wisconsin Go to 5. Kansas, not the same Kansas team from you the past years. They are not looking the same. I mean,
Mm-mm.
we're going to talk about their game against Kansas State in the Sunflower Showdown a little bit, but some things to note as well. Marquette is sliding.
Yeah.
Um, they are sliding. They fall 7 spots to number 18. Ole Miss is up 6 spots to 19. Michigan trying to keep pace with Michigan State and Purdue at number 20. Mizzou slides 6 spots after that home loss against A&M on Saturday. Mississippi State holds still at 22. Clemson, that win against Duke, I mean, they hold still at 23. Creighton holds still at 24, and Maryland drops all the way down to 25. And yeah, and you see UConn out of the AP top 25 after that loss to St. John's. So a
Yeah.
lot of movement,
A
some
lot of
movement.
movement. Them and Illinois drop out the rankings. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. It's this. I'm excited to see how this looks after this week because we do have. We're going to look at the still from Saturday, the schedule, but we do have some interesting conference games this week. But we're going to still continue on Saturday, and obviously we had the sunflower showdown that like we just talked about. But we're gonna go more in depth in that. K State just continues to. I mean, it was their sixth in the they're 5 games in a row now, 5 game winning streak. They just started off well and never looked back in this game.
Yeah, I mean, just David Gasson led the Kansas State Wildcats with 20 points. And yeah, you mentioned, yeah, they never looked back. You had 4 guys score double digits, and you almost had 5. You almost had your whole entire starting lineup score double digits. Gasson obviously leads with 20 points. Doug McDaniel second with 15. Then you had Coleman Hawkins and Max Jones contribute 12 each, and then Brendan Hassan contributed 9. So yeah, this was just a well-rounded game for Kansas State. Yeah, then for Kansas, ugh. I mean, you had a couple limelights with Hunter Dickinson with 21, 15 for Zeke Mayo, and KJ Adams with 13 points, but it was not enough. The thing is, the big thing was Kansas State just they made threes when they needed to. They won 11 of 27 in this game to go 40% from three. Kansas went 6 of 19 for 31%. And then, yeah, just Kansas State on a hot streak, you mentioned. Winning 5 straight, you mentioned. Yep. So, I mean, with the way they're playing, if they keep this up, they could potentially move into the right side of the bubble. I mean, they could be a tournament team to keep it up. And I mean, for them, they've got a couple more opportunities to get some marquee wins. I mean, come tomorrow, actually, they host number 13 Arizona, and they're gonna
Yeah,
have, yeah. So that's gonna be a huge game for Kansas State to really take advantage because this will be one of 2 ranked matches they have left. They don't have many opportunities left, but for them, they got to capitalize on number 13 Arizona coming to town tomorrow, and then at the end of the regular season, number 10 Iowa State on CBS March 8th. So those are the 2 games that Kansas State really need to boost their resume, but they also must take care of business in between because in between Arizona and Iowa State, their schedule is not the most desirable. Like it's not exactly the strongest. So obviously they need to take care of business when it comes to everything between Arizona and Iowa State. But
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, this that 6 game stretch, BYU, Utah, Arizona State, UCF, Colorado, Cincinnati. You need to at least win, and like you said, win at least 4 or 5 of those, plus split with either Arizona or Iowa State, and to even maybe even have a chance. And then you probably would still need to do some work and probably win a few games in Kansas City. But like, I mean, with that resume, and then maybe pulling out and making a run in the conference tournament, maybe they will be a tournament team. But who knows? I mean, this that 5 game stretch plus the Arizona game on. Tomorrow is gonna loom large for them, so we'll see how the Wildcats respond.
hmm yeah. So. with that, I mean, on the if you look on the other side of it, Kansas, like what uh, this Kansas team is not the same team from years past, and I mean they've been inconsistent. Because I mean, you saw what they did against Iowa State on Monday, but to then
Yeah,
turn around and have that performance against Kansas State on the defensive end, that was not great. Because I mean, offensively they weren't bad, they just couldn't get a stop when they couldn't get stops when they needed to, and so yeah, I mean, what's the answer?
I just for me, the answer is it's just that this team, you are what your record says you are. This team has been consistently inconsistent all year long, dude. Like it's just they beat teams who they're better than, and then like yeah, they they played Iowa State when Iowa State was down, but you saw when they played a fully healthy Iowa State with Milan with or well they had to play the crazy Iowa State, and then just on the road like it just seems like this team doesn't play together as a team. It's just like a collective group of individuals that just get theirs. I feel like that's just the answer, man. They don't play together as a team, and that's sometimes the downside of portaling your entire team.
Hmm. And I mean, you had I think I saw read that Christian Brown had called out Kansas's performance as of late. Mind you, Christian Brown was a part of the roster that won the national championship only 3 years ago, and he was teammates with KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris. So it's not some like 40-year ago player calling out this current Kansas team. It's a guy who actually played just a couple years ago and are
Right.
actually were inside of the facility with a couple of the guys that are on the roster now. So if you have Christian Brown calling you out, calling your team out for how they've been performing, calling out how they haven't been playing to the standard of Kansas basketball, then there are issues. Like that's glaring issues for this Kansas squad.
Yeah, they're in trouble, man. I don't know how better it gets for them, but I know like their fan base is in a bad spot, which is apathy. I think this is the most apathetic I've seen like Kansas fans like ever.
Hmm. So yeah, struggle boat right now for the Jayhawks, and
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Does it get Let me see if like their schedule, like
let's
what
look.
they have coming up, because I mean, let's see. They might have a chance to rebound because I mean after this I think let me see.
It eases up for them for the next 4 games, and then they play Texas Tech at home on March 1st.
Yeah, because they have so tomorrow, yeah, Kansas has the game against Colorado at Allen Fieldhouse. So yeah, they've got opportunities to get right. You've got Colorado, you're at Utah, and then at BYU. You host Oklahoma State, and then you're at Colorado. Yeah, before that March 1st matchup against Texas Tech at Allen Fieldhouse. So yeah,
But look at the end of the season; it's brutal.
yeah, that beginning of March for them, the end they got to go to Fertitta. Oh boy.
Oh man, that could get ugly.
Hmm. That
And then
might
you
look.
and then you end the season finale against Arizona. Jeez, at home. Oh my
I mean, you're
gosh.
lucky. If you're Kansas, I think you're lucky that game's at home. Because if that was at the McHale Center, I don't envy Kansas' chances as much against Arizona if with it
That's
being at
true.
Allen Fieldhouse compared to it being at the McHale Center.
Yeah, that's true. They're a different team at home.
Yeah, but that's I think Kansas, and I mean those issues are going to be something to talk about at some point. But I'm going to take a look at some of the other action that happened on Saturday because it's not just top heavy, but I mean we are seeing some things like that are developing elsewhere in the
Yep.
Big 12. Um,
Baylor is back on track with 91-76 win at home over the UCF.
hmm Yep. Utah goes to Morgantown and they fall in the Mountaineers 72-61. And then Cincinnati beats BYU 84-66. Cincinnati's they're just trying to get anything they could out of this season, honestly. So they're
Yeah, I mean
extreme levels of desperation.
yeah, it was definitely they were desperate, man. That's probably their most complete game of the season, to be honest with you. So I mean, it was a good win for them.
Hmm.
And then we have the lone game on yesterday where Arizona or Oklahoma State gets a big win at home to get out the basement of the Big 12. So they would beat Oklahoma State or beat Arizona State by 13.
Hmm. And I mean, I guess like for Oklahoma State, yeah, that's a nice win just to get a bit of confidence to boost the morale a little bit for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Because looking at their immediate schedule, they do get another chance for a decent win on Wednesday at TCU. Then they got to host Texas Tech on Saturday. So, yep, let's just see if Oklahoma State might have a little bit of momentum before taking on Texas Tech. But looking further ahead for today's lone matchup in the Big 12, I Bleav this is a big Monday match. Baylor will travel to the Fertitta Center to take on the number six ranked Houston Cougars. That will be at 8 p.m. tip off on ESPN. So, I mean, does Baylor have like a chance against Houston? Because I feel like maybe in like the preseason before like in the preseason, I think Baylor and Houston was a much more interesting match than what we're seeing right now.
Well, I think if they do have a chance, it's going to come up to Norchad Omier, who was the leading scorer in Saturday's game. But if he comes to play and VJ Edgecombe play, I think that's going to be have to be the recipe for an upset. Those two are going to have to come in ready to play, and also with some contributions from Robert Wright and Jeremy Roach. If those four guys can get some production, that maybe that could they can cook up an upset. I feel like those four guys are going to be the key for them to really do something.
Hmm. Yep. And I mean, Baylor, I Bleav, yeah, they're without Ojamuna because he went down on the game in the game on Saturday, and he's out for the rest of the year. So that's a piece that Baylor's going to be missing for the rest of the year. So we're going to have to see who can step up
Yeah,
to make up for the loss of Ojamuna for Baylor. And yeah, then we look to tomorrow. Obviously, Iowa State travels down to Orlando to take on the UCF Knights. I think this game is going to be unpredictable because who knows what UCF you're going to get. I,
I gotta think, bro. I gotta think that they're definitely gonna have a different game plan um, coming in, especially um, since the last time they tried to run with us, like it was just absolutely um, a disaster when they won by 25. But one question that I do have is who are some of the players to look out for in the UCF game?
I think the obvious one will have to be Ivy Curry. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that was the one spotlight that he was one of the spotlights that UCF had in the game at Houghton Coliseum. He had 24 points for UCF. I think it'd be him and Keyshawn Hall. Those two are going to be major pieces. And then who knows if they get something from Darius Johnson or Mustafa Time or
yeah,
Dalen Coleman. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to be mainly be Keyshawn Hall and Jordan Ivy Curry. Those are the two guys that you really got to look out for. And then who knows if Time can put up, I don't know, double digit points. You get something from your bench as well. And it's a recipe for success for UCF to maybe get a marquee win at home.
definitely. What do you think? What's the key for Iowa State to win this game?
I think it's getting back to what really got him a lot of success. It's really being able to establish yourself in the paint and dominate the paint. Get a few offensive boards, get like those second chance points, and then forcing UCF into a bunch of turnovers and capitalizing off of them. Like that's the bread and butter of Iowa State. If they continue to do their bread and butter, and if UCF if they play like they did against us the first time around, or and we just come at them and they turn the ball over a lot, because I think UCF is still like as far as I've seen, they're consistent ever. It just comes down to what form of UCF you get.
Right.
But ultimately, I think Iowa State, with the mojo they have back, I think they are going to feel great. They're going to be confident. I think they can take care of business in Orlando.
Yeah, I think if we play our game, we can definitely win this game by double digits. And just as a stat, as you know, UCF turns the ball over at an extremely high rate. So I just look for us to cause a lot of live ball turnovers. Do you have any other thoughts about any of the other games on Tuesday? It's a loaded slate.
I think yeah, the big one everyone should be paying attention to is Arizona, Kansas State. That's going to be the major one out of this slate. Utah, Cincinnati, BYU, West Virginia are all included in that 6 p.m. window, and the Colorado Kansas is the game at 8. But the main game for tomorrow will have to be Arizona, Kansas State, just to see if Kansas State can continue their winning ways and get another ranked win.
Yeah, my hot take is I think that streak continues. I think they beat Arizona at home, so that's my hot take.
Yeah,
But I think that's where we're going to end it today. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the Bleav in Iowa State podcast. Just a few things we will point out before we leave. Um, the Bleav in Iowa State podcast is a top 15 podcast in the state of Iowa. So thank you guys once again for the support as always. And also, we are can be found on social media. Down below here are our 5 forms of social media. We also live stream through LinkedIn. It can be found on my page at Tyler Carter Coons. Coons spelled Konce. But here below are the 5 different forms of social media, and here's where we can be found on Twitter. This is where Cody can be found on Twitter. He can be found at Matt Campbell Impersonator, and then me Tyler on Twitter. I can be found at Side Tag Guy. So thank you guys for listening. And for Tyler Carter,
and for Cody Van Cielum,
this is the Bleav in Iowa State podcast. Roll clones, baby.
let's go State.
Hey, my bad on Saturday. I meant to. I pressed the